Now we need to talk about sex-linked traits. So we've already talked about how your sex chromosomes, pair number 23, determine your secondary sexual characteristics. If you have two big chromosomes at your sex chromosomes, that's XX, and that makes you genetically a girl or female. If you have a big one and a little one, like the picture shows here, then that makes you XY, or genetically male. Okay? Now there are genes on these chromosomes, and so that means that some genes are sex-linked, meaning that they are linked to your sex because they are on the chromosomes that determine your sex. So this is just showing the process of meiosis and how egg or sperm are made. So a mom, she's a female, so she's XX. So when her DNA replicates and splits in meiosis 1 and splits in meiosis 2, every single one of her eggs has an X in it because that's all she's got to give is an X. So mom gives every single daughter and son X's. So you get your X from your mom. Even you boys, you get your X from your mom. Now dads, they're male, so they have XY. So half of their sperm have X's, half of their sperms have Y's. So the dad is what decides whether you have a daughter or a son, because the dad's sperm determines your second sex chromosome, whether you get an X or a Y. So in 1910, there was a researcher, his name was Thomas Morgan. He was working with genetics of fruit flies. And some of the traits that he was studying, he was doing his Punnett squares, he was predicting his outcomes, but then when he did the actual matings, his actual outcomes didn't match his Punnett square predictions. And he couldn't understand why. And then he thought about it and he goes, you know what? These numbers make sense if these genes are located on the sex chromosomes. Okay? So he realized that there are genes on the X and the Y. The genes that we're going to study for sex-linked traits are always going to be on the X chromosome. Okay? So they're always going to be on the X chromosome. And the Y chromosome doesn't have anything matching with it, because remember the Y chromosome is short, so it doesn't have as many genes on it as the X chromosome does because the X chromosome is so big. Some examples in humans, color blindness is located on the X chromosome, and baldness, male patterned baldness, is located on the X chromosome. In fruit flies, eye color is located on the X chromosome. So how do you know if a question you're working on is a sex-linked trait? Well, it may give you the clue that says in men or in boys, you see this trait way more often. That's because since boys only have one X, whatever gene they get on the X, that's what they show up as the phenotype. But girls have two X's, so if they get a bad gene on one of their X's, they're protected by their other X. So the only way they show these traits are if they're homozygous. They have to have the gene on both of their X's instead of just one. So girls don't get these traits as often. Okay, so here's you a Punnett square. We've seen one of these already in one of the activities we did, the bunny genetics. Okay, so your chances of having a boy or girl with each birth, well, mom is XX, dad is XY, so you got a 50-50 chance of a male or a female. Okay, now when we do our Punnett squares, since these are sex-linked traits, you must use X's and Y's. Okay, in everything else we've studied so far, we didn't need X's and Y's because it didn't matter if you were a boy or a girl, because the traits weren't on your sex chromosomes. With sex-linked traits, they are on the sex chromosomes. Now, sex matters. Okay, it matters if you're XX or XY. So whenever you get the clue that you're doing a sex-linked trait by saying boys have it more often, or it just straight up says this is a sex-linked trait, you must do X's and Y's. Okay, that means on one side you've got mom, XX. On the other side, you've got dad, XY. Now, the gene we're going to be studying is going to be written either as a superscript or a subscript. In this PowerPoint, you'll notice there are subscripts. In the worksheet you're going to work on next, if you take a look, you'll notice there are superscripts. Okay? Now, there's also two ways you can do this. In the PowerPoint here, you'll see that the only time I write a letter is if it has that gene. Okay? You can also use capital and lowercase letters to represent dominant and recessive. It's really your choice. Just go consistently so you know which one's which. So here, male pattern baldness is recessive. So I said if you've got the gene, I wrote a B. And if you don't have the gene, I wrote nothing. Okay? So mom is heterozygous for the bald gene. So that means one of her X's has a bald gene, B, and her other X has a normal gene, so no baldness. So I just wrote it normal. Dad is not bald, so he has a normal X and then a Y. So you do this the same way you always do. X from here, X with a B from here, X with the B from here, Y from here. Normal X, normal X, normal X, and a Y. Okay? So if we look here, this girl and this boy are normal. They are not bald. Now, this boy right here, whoops, he's got that baldness gene. He got it from his mama. So he's going to be having some male patterned baldness. Now, this female right here, she has a normal X. So she's not going to go bald, but she's heterozygous for baldness. So now we have a new vocabulary word that you need to know. It's called a carrier. Females of sex-linked traits who have the gene, but they're heterozygous, so they don't show the phenotype of the gene, are called carriers because they carry the gene silently in them without knowing. Okay? So here we got 25% are bald males. That's this guy. 25% are carrier females. That's this one. 25% are normal males. And 25% are non-carrier or normal females. Okay? Let's do one more. Now this time, let's say dad is bald. Okay, so he has a B on his gene and a Y. Notice there are never any letters on the Y. Never any letters on the Y. Let me say that one more time. There are never any letters on the Y. Okay, never, ever, ever. Grill that into your head. Not grill. Drill that into your head. There are never any letters on the Y. Let's say mom is normal. She's not a carrier. She has no bald genes. Okay, do your cross. We have a carrier female. We have a carrier female because they both got it from dad, because dad only has a bald X to give. And both of the males are safe. They're normal because they got normal X's from mom. Okay? All right. So remember, with sex-linked traits, you must write X and Y, and the Y never, ever gets a letter. Okay? All right, if you need some help with this, pause it. Otherwise, hopefully you already watched the Amoeba Sisters blood typing. Now you can watch the Amoeba Sisters sex-linked traits.